Hi friends, it's Lauren Taylor. Thank you so much for joining me in my craft room today. I'm grateful to have you here for a Pretty Pink Posh project video. I'm going to be creating a fun spring themed card using the fox holder die set as well as the Valentine holder edition dies. I'm going to bring in some images from the Flower Garden stamp set and use its coordinating dies. And I also will use the layered butterfly floral stencils. I'm going to bring in a sentiment a little later from the Valentine's greeting stamp set, but let's move on to stamping our images today. I'm using a few of the floral stamps as well as a few of the leaves from, again, the Flower Garden stamp set. And I stamp them in a pale ink so I can do what looks to be no line coloring, but I'm actually going to stamp these images again after I'm done coloring them in with some alcohol markers. I'm doing all of the flowers in shades of like a purple or like a blue violet purple, and then I will bring in some green colors for the leaves. I used a Misty to stamp my images and I left my images in the Misty, so I haven't touched them. I just stamped them again with that pale ink onto some cardstock, and then I'm going to put that paper, the paper that I'm coloring on, right back into my Misty once I'm done to stamp the images again. And this time I will stamp them with a colorful ink. I'm going to use VersaFine Clear inks, and the reason why I did not stamp with them the first time is because they are not alcohol marker friendly. If I was using watercolors, I could definitely use those inks first, but I wanted to use these vibrant color inks to coordinate with the flowers and leaves, so I'm going to use my Misty to stamp them again. So I put the paper in the exact same spot that I stamped them the first time, and I'm going to stamp the flower images with the Very Perry VersaFine Clear ink to create the outline of those flowers, so they're very purple, very blue violet, very cute. And then I am bringing in Grass Green, also a VersaFine Clear ink, to stamp my leaves. And I'll go ahead and make sure that I don't have ink on the flower or the leaves depending on what I was coloring, because I actually wanted to stamp these again, so I didn't want to remove the images from my Misty. So I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to do a little more stamping when I'm done with this card today. I also did lots of die cutting, so I used the Flower Garden coordinating dies to cut out those flowers and leaves, and then I cut out the fox holder dies and some of the Valentine holder edition dies. But instead of making a fox, I wanted to show you how I turned it into a raccoon. So I die cut my large image of the fox out of some lighter gray cardstock, and then I cut the face piece as well as just the tail and the little tip of the tail out of some dark gray cardstock. And I'm just using a pencil to kind of draw in where I wanted to trim out so I can trim this face down to be a little bit more like the raccoon fur where it looks like it has a little bandit mask on. So I am following my pencil lines and using my scissors to trim it. Now I didn't do the most even job when I drew it with a pencil, but that's okay. I'm just going to go ahead and try to shape these a little more so they look a little more even, a little more rounded. I think it turns out pretty good. I guess I should put on my wish list for Paulina to maybe make some raccoon add-ons for our fox holder die in the future, but this is just a fun way you can adapt it to be a different kind of critter. So once I was happy with how my trimming came along, I am going to grab my liquid adhesive and we'll glue this portion of our raccoon together. So again, just trying to create that little kind of dark gray bandit mask that raccoons have. Once that's in place, I'll go ahead and add some of the other pieces. I'm going to add in the inside of my raccoon's ears, which is a die from the die set, and I die cut those out of some really pale, kind of peachy pink colored cardstock. So I'll go ahead and add a little bit of liquid adhesive to where those go onto the ears, and then I have a pickup tool to help me pick up those pieces of paper and get those glued in place. Once I have those down, I'll go ahead and add in the details of the eyes and mouth. I die cut the eyes out of that light gray cardstock because I thought, it would be kind of fun to bring in a lighter color for the eyes instead of having white. It looks like the has gray eyes. And then I die cut the nose with the mouth out of some black cardstock, and then the nose as well, because that is one die, is also from black cardstock. And I don't think this really needed to be added on top of the mouth, but I just like that it gave that little extra dimension for where the nose is. And I glued that down in the center of the darker gray eye fur section. I glued down the eyes, again using liquid glue and my pickup tool. I die cut the center stomach portion of the fox, or my raccoon now, out of some white cardstock, and I'm just going to slide that in between the arms and glue that in place on the stomach of my little raccoon. And then I have the tail pieces to attach. So before I glue down anything on the tail, I'm also going to draw out some of the kind of like stripes that a raccoon tail has. I'm going to follow the design of the tip of the tail die that comes from Pretty Pink Posh. So that kind of like mountain valley kind of design, and I'm going to sketch out the areas on this dark gray cardstock piece that I die cut where I wanted to cut it out. So I'm sorry it's a little hard to see because it's pencil on a dark gray cardstock, but once I have my little sketches in place, I'm just following that to cut out what will be the center stripe of my raccoon, and then I also have a little stripe that will connect at the base of the tail, so I will trim that as well. So just following the pencil line and using some scissors that I like to use for detail fussy cutting to cut those out. And there you can see the little centerpiece, and then finally I'll cut out what's at the base of the tail. So the top part of what I'm cutting now has that same kind of zigzag cut, and then I'm going to follow the curve of the side of my raccoon to trim off for the bottom, or what will be the base of the tail. Once that's trimmed down, I can go ahead and glue those in place. So I'm going to start with this smaller piece and glue this to the base of the tail, right up against the body or the side of my raccoon, and that also gives it a little more dimension. And then I will glue the tip of the tail on, and again, this is a die from the die set because it is a fox, and foxes generally have a lighter tip to their tail. And then I'm gluing the center stripe. So just created a little fun raccoon tail with 3 stripes of darker fur. Once that's done, that will finish the raccoon. I think it looks awfully cute, just like this. I did notice I got some adhesive everywhere, so I'm trying to use an adhesive eraser to get some of that off. And I'm going to move on to decorating my little floral basket. So I die cut this basket again from the Valentine Holder Edition die set out of some craft cardstock. I want it to look kind of like a little wicker basket. And then I have my flowers and leaves that I stamped and colored and die cut, and I'll just go ahead and get those glued into and around my basket. I'm going to start with the largest flower right in the center and have it actually be on the outside of the basket, so it looks like the flowers are kind of falling, or not falling out, but draping out of the basket, I guess would be a more appropriate term than falling out. And then the other 2 flowers I'm going to glue on the back side of the basket. As for the leaf parts, I'm just going to tuck those in where I think they look nice. So just adding a little bit of liquid adhesive and then putting those in between the flower images, having one being more of the front part at the top of the basket and the other one being more on the back, just trying to create a dimension of like a bouquet of flowers in this basket. And then I'll tuck in this large leaf as my last little element. I thought about adding the bow to the basket. I die cut the bow out of some kind of lilac purple cardstock, a color that I thought matched the flowers really well. And I thought about putting on the basket, but then I thought, how cute would it be as a little bow on the raccoon? So that's what I'm going to go with. So I'm going to add liquid adhesive to the back side of my flowers in my basket. And then I'm going to tuck it into my cute little raccoon, since the arms are die cut separately so they can hold things, hence why it's called the fox holder dies. And I just think it looks so cute. This cute little trash panda is going to celebrate spring with the adorable floral basket. I'm going to add some liquid adhesive to where the knot of the bow is and then put that onto my raccoon's head. I went a little bit to the right, kind of like where it would be just above the ear. I don't know, off center just felt really cute. And that finishes off my adaptation of my raccoon from the fox holder dies. And let's move on to some stenciling. I'm going to use that same lilac purple cardstock that I used for the bow, and I trimmed this to be A2 in size, just an A2 panel. And there are 4 different layers in the layered butterfly floral stencil. So I'm going to start with the first layer and add twisted citron to all of the images in this first layer of the stencil. Once I'm happy with the ink blending, I'm going to bring in Dusty Concord Distress Oxide with the next layer. And then for the next layer, I'm going to use Milled Lavender Distress Oxide, and that's all of the ink blending that I'm going to do. For the final layer of the stencil, I'm actually going to bring in some Solar Paste. This is from Ranger and Simon Hurley, and the color Royal Flush. I'm just going to use a palette knife to pick up that stencil paste and then use a large scraper to spread that across the whole stencil. Once I'm happy with the coverage, I will do a stencil reveal, but this palette knife is really handy too when I am just trying to add a little bit more in areas that I can see the stencil hadn't been fully covered for with that lunar paste. I'm going to go ahead and save the rest right back into the jar, making sure I get even the leftover on my large scraper tool. And let's do a stencil reveal, always my favorite part. Now the paste right now looks kind of like an opaque white color, but it's going to dry back even more. So I'm going to go ahead and carefully peel this off. And I am actually really, really loving this color combination. I know Twisted Citron on purple paper sounds kind of funny, but I just think it turned out so pretty. Go ahead and set that aside to dry while I stamp my sentiment. I brought in the Valentine greeting stamp set because I really like the Lots of Love. I thought that was really cute, and that I love that it has its own coordinating dies. Sentiments with a coordinating die just brings me joy in life, so I wanted to use this stamp set for this card as well. I'm going to use that same purple cardstock, and I'm going to stamp, again, Lots of Love sentiment, and I brought back the Very Perry VersaFine Clair ink pad. It's a fun ink, makes really easy to stamp sentiments because it's nice and crisp, and it has a great stamp almost every time with just one stamp. You don't really need a stamp positioner tool like a Misty. I went ahead and die cut it out, as well as 2 additional extra sentiments so I can layer them together to make a sturdy sentiment. It'll be kind of like adding a chipboard sentiment once all those layers are put together. It'll have good dimension. So I'm going to use liquid adhesive and glue the first 2 layers together, and once those are in place, I'll add more glue to the back and add that 3rd layer. So a very nice sturdy sentiment. My background was dry by this time, and you can see it really lightened up, but it's going to look so pretty once I tilt it in the light and you see the fun shine that it has. I'm really loving this spring background. So I have a rough idea of how I want to lay out my card, but I decided to trim my A2 panel down just a bit because I really wanted a bit of a white border. So I'm going to trim my panel to be 4 by, actually I think it's a little more than that, so not quite 4, more like 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. So I trimmed off just a little bit off of 2 of the sides, horizontal and vertical, so there'd be a very teeny tiny white border around my background. I am getting my tape runner out, and I'm adding adhesive to the back of my background piece of pink cardstock and gluing that to my card base. Here you can see that teeny tiny white border. I'm going to grab a lot of foam adhesive, and I'm going to cover the back side of my raccoon. So just completely cover it with foam adhesive. I even use my scraps. I never throw away foam adhesive. I always use it. And I completely covered the back of my raccoon, peeled off the release paper and attached it to my card. And then I'm using liquid adhesive for my sentiment. And I'm going to use the grid on my glass board to try to get that centered and straight as possible. To add a little bit extra to this card, I think it looks great just like this, but I wanted to bring in a little bit more white. So I'm going to grab the Valentine's Day clay confetti because there's these white hearts in there, and I'll use my pickup tool to go ahead and pick up a few of these white hearts and place them around the card. And once I'm happy with how many and the placement, I'll grab my liquid adhesive and then pick up each of these white hearts with my pickup tool, add adhesive, and then put the heart right back down so it will adhere to the card where I put the glue. That will finish off my card. I hope you had fun today with me with this spring card and learning how you can turn the fox holder die into an adorable little raccoon. I'd love to know what you think of this cute trash panda and the colors. And let me know what other critters you think we can turn this fox holder die into. I'm sure we could do even a red panda out of this cute die, but let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!